What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Anthony Caldwell for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. And he asked a question. Basically, his question was, what if the NBA, what if NBC still had the rights to the NBA? Or what if NBC never lost rights to covering the NBA? Because back in, I think it was 2002, I believe that was the last year that the NBA was covered by NBC. I think it was the 2001, 2002 season. I think that's the last year that the NBA was covered by NBC. And starting in 2002, 2003, coverage shifted to ABC, where they still have games today, I believe. But of course, TNT, which had rights to the NBA for something like 40 years, lost their rights, I believe. And for the first time in 20 plus years, the NBA will be covered by NBC. Now, we saw a snippet or a precursor of the NBA being covered by NBC with the Olympics. And to me, just that was superior to just about anything that we had seen over the past 20 years when it comes to ESPN, when it comes to ABC. You know, the only enjoyable coverage that I see is TNT. People say, well, TNT may not be that informative. Not necessarily, but they are very entertaining, and you want to watch them. And the production has a lot to do with it. But to me, I'm not certain. It's no certainty that if the NBA stayed with NBC, that it would still be a superior product. There's no certainty in that, because I kind of wonder if part of the problem is generational. You got to understand, like, we talk about how these players today don't respect the players of the past. And, one of the things that's prominent in our culture today is that people don't really have an appreciation for history. They don't really care. So what I'm getting at is the producers, the analysts, those who were part of the NBA coverage in the 90s and the early 2000s, well, those people are either close to being out of the business, or they don't have the same influence, or some of them are gone, who are older. I mean, permanently, right? So we have a bunch of young people who are in their steed covering sports who don't have the same vision. They don't have the same outlook as far as how they want to present the game. Okay, so that I can't really sit here and say it would be superior. I can't say that. I can't say that it would overall, I should say, be a superior production compared to ESPN. I can't say that, because honestly, I don't really watch much NFL. I remember back in the day when the NBA, when the Major League Baseball was covered by NBC, I thought they did a pretty good job. Now, this is what I will say. One of the great things that I thought really shone through with the NBA coverage on NBC back in the 90s. And don't forget, the coverage in the 80s with CBS was really, really good too. Some people say it was superior. But, as a now 40-something-year-old man who grew up in the 90s, the NBA or NBC was the shit. What I liked about them was the production. It was an event. This game wasn't just a game. This was a battle. This was a marquee matchup. You have to see this game. And the thing that NBA did that NBC did, excuse me, is that and most coverage did, but NBA on NBC did this. They marketed the game. It was a balance of the game and the stars. And yes, Michael Jordan was the star, but they did not oversaturate you with Michael Jordan. When you really look at it, we look at all the basketball programming. They didn't talk about the Bulls and Michael Jordan ad nauseum. Yes, they showed the Bulls a lot more than any other team, but they didn't saturate you constantly with talk about Jordan and the Bulls. Now, of course, um, we didn't have as many sports programs on. We didn't have all these multiple ESPN, all these Fox Sports and all that. But at the same time, they talked about all the different teams. And as kids now, well, preteens and teenagers, we knew about all of the teams. We knew about all the stars. We knew how a team's offense ran. We knew who were the good defensive teams, the great defensive teams, the great offensive teams. We knew the coaches. Those of us who really watched the NBA, that really were into it, we knew the starting lineups of all the teams in the NBA. Some of the teams we knew the entire roster. We were educated, informed fans. And that's one of the biggest differences I see today. The way the game is being presented today, it's not aimed to inform at all. It's only there to entertain, to put on a minstrel show, and to appease the worst fan base in the history of sports. Whereas when I watched the NBA on NBC, Huey Brown would tell us about the game, teach us about the game. Bill Walton would talk about the great centers that he matched up against. You know, God rest his soul. He would talk about the greatness of Kareem, the majesty of, even though he didn't play against Wilt, the majesty and largeness that was Wilt Chamberlain. They romanticized these great players of the past. They didn't try to tear them down. They build them up. They was building up the product. So you wanted to look into the history of the game, and when you look into the history of the game, you start growing an appreciation for how majestic the game is. You don't just like a player, you fell in love with the game. Marv Alvin brought excitement to the game with his broadcasting. The back and forth with, Bill Walton and Steve Snapper Jones was great. You know what I'm saying? I didn't like everybody. I didn't like everybody affiliated with the NBA and NBC. I wasn't a real big fan of Peter Vesey. I thought he could be a hater. You know what I'm saying? Hannah Storm was absolutely sexy as hell. I swear to God, man, sometimes I want to just, now about 15, 16, I just want to jump through that damn television and, yeah, man. But anyway, I don't know if the coverage would be the same, though, because I still think that the same or similar negative trends would have occurred. Producers telling them to focus on this guy, these players, to hell with anything before 1970. Let's start on. I just think the same trends would have occurred. Maybe there'd have been some more pushback against it. So I can't tell you. I can't sit here and say that coverage would be better if the NBA stayed with NBC. I can't say that. And, another thing I want to say too. Social media has dragged down these players to our level. Like, the less we knew about those players in the 90s, the better it was. But when some of these guys come out here and they open their mouths and say some of the dumbest shit, right? You start losing some respect for these guys. Now, it could be my perspective of being an older person now, as opposed to being a more impressionable young kid, um, where you kind of still look up to older people, uh, or look up to them because they're adults or whatever. But they were presented as warriors, these players. I didn't care about what, what I'm saying, Sean Kemp was doing outside of the NBA. Yeah, we would read that he had 19 kids, but I didn't care about that, blood. All I cared about was how many points is Sean Kemp going to average this year? Is he going to be effective in this series? Can Sean Kemp stay the same Sean Kemp in Cleveland after the trade? That's all or was it a free agent signing? I can't remember whether it was traded or not. But anyway, I think he got traded. But anyway, that's what we cared about, man. All this TMZ crap, worst thing that could have happened in sports. Because I believe it's had a feminizing effect on the game. Like, people seem to care about all this extracurricular nonsense that you used to see in the tabloids. When you went to the store, you went to the grocery store, it'd be in the tabloid magazines. And nobody really cared. I know I didn't. But yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't really answer this video or answer your question in this video the way you may have wanted me to answer it, but I really don't know. I don't know whether or not, if the NBA stayed with NBC, whether the game would be totally different. Because I still think that there are certain forces out there, generational forces and trends that would have affected the game negatively no matter who was in charge. Although I do think the process was accelerated with ABC, because when you look at it historically from a perspective, ABC, to me, and from what I've read, they've always been the inferior um, of the three networks when it comes to covering sports, for the most part. Um, because I don't really, when you look at the history of NBC, CBS, and ABC, the only thing I really recall ABC covering a lot was uh, boxing. I think they did cover boxing, auto racing. I think they were pretty good at that, but every time that they covered the NBA before, I think they had a contract with the NBA in the 60s. I don't remember it being that good. Maybe I'm wrong, but I looked at some of the old footage from the 60s where when the NBA got its first contract after they lost the DeMont contract in the 50s, the DeMont network. It didn't look that good to me. So anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.